Batman is not the greatest street-level hero. You've been lied to. Sure, he's rich, he's smart, and he's got cool gadgets, but strip all that away, and what's left? A billionaire playing dress-up. Meanwhile, Daredevil blind, broke, and battered fights with nothing but pure skill and an iron will. No Batcave, no Alfred. No backup plan, just fist and determination. So let's settle this once and for all. Is Daredevil actually a better street-level hero than Batman? The answer might just shatter everything you believe about the Dark Knight. Daredevil fights with pure skill, while Batman hides behind gadgets. Batman is known as the peak of human ability, but how much of that is actually him and how much is just his tech? He has an armored suit that absorbs bullets, a grappling hook to escape fights, and gadgets for almost every situation. Daredevil, he fights in a plain suit with nothing but his fists and hands, hearing and a pair of billy clubs. Let's be real, if Batman didn't have his gear, how many fights would he actually win? Sure, he's skilled, but could he dodge bullets like Daredevil does with just his senses? Daredevil doesn't need prep time or a utility belt. He jumps into fights blind literally and still wins. If we're talking about raw combat ability, no gadgets, no help, no Batcave, who's actually more impressive? Daredevil's blindness makes him stronger. Batman's fear makes him weaker. Batman's entire persona is built around fear. He saw his parents die and decided to dress up as a bat to scare criminals. But deep down, Batman himself is still ruled by fear. Fear of failure, fear of loss, fear of becoming the thing he fights against. Daredevil, on the other hand, lost his sight as a kid, and instead of letting that hold him back, he turned it into his greatest weapon. He doesn't rely on fear, he doesn't fight from the shadows, he charges in head-on. Where Batman terrifies his enemies from the dark, Daredevil fights in the middle of the street surrounded by them. Think about it. Batman needs criminals to be afraid of him to be effective. If that fear ever disappears, what happens? But Daredevil doesn't need intimidation, he just fights harder. When fear is removed from the equation, who's really the stronger hero? Daredevil is more willing to cross the line. Batman has one role: no killing, and because of that, Gotham's worst criminals keep coming back again and again to kill more innocent people. The Joker alone has caused thousands of deaths that Batman could have stopped if he had ended things early. Instead, Batman keeps throwing the same villains in Arkham, only for them to escape. Daredevil, he doesn't go out of his way to kill, but when it comes to villains like Bullseye or the Kingpin, he knows that sometimes the only way to end the threat is permanently. If Batman actually wanted to protect Gotham, wouldn't he have stopped Joker for good a long time ago? Batman needs sidekicks, Daredevil does it alone. Batman has an entire team to help him: Robin, Nightwing, Batgirl, Red Hood, Alfred, even the Justice League. He always has backup when he needs it. If Gotham gets too crazy, he can call in his allies. He's built a network of heroes to help him carry the load. Daredevil, he fights alone. Sure, he has allies like Foggy, Karen, and sometimes Elektra, but in the end, it's always just him against an entire criminal empire. He doesn't have an army of sidekicks to watch his back. If Batman had to face Gotham's villains completely alone without the Bat family, would he be able to handle it the way Daredevil does? Gotham never gets better, but Hell's Kitchen does. Batman has been fighting crime in Gotham for years, but let's be real, Gotham is still a mess. The Joker is still out there killing people every other week. Penguin is running crime rings, and somehow Arkham Asylum still hasn't figured out how to lock its doors. No matter how many times Batman stops a villain, Gotham always goes back to being a war zone. Hell's Kitchen, on the other hand, it actually sees improvement. Daredevil's presence makes a difference. He doesn't just stop criminals, he dismantles entire crime operations permanently. The Kingpin's empire crushed multiple times, corrupt cops taken down. The city doesn't stay perfect, but it visibly changes because of Daredevil's work. So if the measure of a hero is how much they actually improve their city, is Batman even that effective? Or is he just keeping the cycle of crime going while Daredevil actually fixes things? Daredevil's enemies are more personal than Batman's. Batman has a rogues gallery filled with iconic villains, but let's be honest, most of them treat their battles with him like a game. Joker does what he does because he enjoys playing with Batman. The Riddler challenges Batman to puzzles because he wants attention. Even Bane, who once broke Batman's back, was more interested in proving a point than actually killing him. Daredevil's villains, they hate him. Kingpin systematically ruins Matt Murdock's life. Bullseye kills the people he loves just to break him. Batman fights for justice. Daredevil fights people who have personally tried to rip his life apart. Which hero actually has more to lose in every battle? Daredevil faces more personal consequences than Batman. Batman might be hunted by the police, but at the end of the day, he can take off the mask and relax as Bruce Wayne, a billionaire with unlimited resources. If Batman gets injured, he has Alfred to patch him up. If he needs an escape, he can disappear into Wayne Manor. Even if Gotham turns against him, he can always retreat. Daredevil, he has no safety net. If Matt Murdock gets injured, he either patches himself up or suffers through it. He doesn't have millions of dollars to disappear when things get tough. His enemies don't just try to kill Daredevil, they destroy Matt Murdock's life. He's been disbarred, lost his job, lost his home, and still kept fighting. If Batman had to survive without his money, his mansion, or his tech, could he still do it? Daredevil has proven time and time again that he can. Daredevil's training is more brutal than Batman's. Batman traveled the world learning from the best fighters, assassins, and escape artists. He studied under the League of Assassins, trained in different martial arts, and honed himself into the perfect human. But let's be honest, he was still a billionaire on a training tour. Daredevil, on the other hand, was trained by Stick, a man who didn't just teach him how to fight but broke him down completely. Stick didn't give Matt Murdock any special resources or fancy weapons, he just threw him into brutal battles and expected him to win. Imagine being blind and still being expected to fight multiple enemies at once. Daredevil had no choice but to adapt or die. Plus, Batman always had an escape route if things went south in his training, while Daredevil was forced to learn survival in the streets of Hell's Kitchen. Does this mean Daredevil's training made him tougher than Batman's? Daredevil fights for survival, Batman fights for an ideal. Bruce Wayne was born into wealth and privilege. Yes, he lost his parents, but he still had a fortune to fall back on. He didn't have to struggle to survive, he chose to become Batman because of his personal philosophy. Matt Murdock, he was born into a rough neighborhood, lost his dad to crime, had to fight for everything. He didn't just become Daredevil because of a belief, he became Daredevil because that was the only way to survive in Hell's Kitchen. His enemies aren't just psychopaths in costumes, they're the same criminals who destroyed his childhood. Daredevil isn't afraid of pain, Batman avoids it. Batman wears armor to protect himself. He fights from the shadows to minimize risk. He calculates every battle to make sure he has an escape plan. As skilled as he is, he still plays it safe. Daredevil, he takes the hits. He doesn't wear bulletproof armor and he doesn't avoid fights. He jumps into battles knowing he'll come out blooded and broken. But he does it anyway. He fights with broken ribs, bruised eyes, and cracked bones, yet still keeps going. If you had to bet on one hero to survive a real street fight, no tricks, no gear, no prep time, would you pick the guy in body armor or the blind guy who takes beatings for fun? Batman fights with money, Daredevil fights with pain. One hides in the shadows, the other takes every hit and keeps going. So who's the real warrior?